Yeah. Family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go.
I'm the Reverend Dr. Jamie Mathias, pastor of Holy Family Catholic Church in Austin, Texas. Now that we're in the year of Matthew, have you noticed what's been happening? In his gospel, Matthew is intent on proving to us that Jesus is the Messiah, the Christ, the anointed one who would fulfill the prophecies of the great Israelite prophets. The prophet Micah had prophesied that the Messiah would be born in the town of Bethlehem. And so where does Matthew tell us that Jesus was born? In Bethlehem, of course. The prophet Isaiah had prophesied that people would come from afar bearing gold and frankincense. And so what gifts did the Magi bring to the Christ child, according to Matthew? Gold and frankincense. The prophet Hosea had prophesied that the Messiah would come up out of Egypt. And so where does Matthew tell us that Mary and Joseph took their child? To Egypt. And Matthew suggests that some unknown prophets prophesied that the Messiah would come from Nazareth. And so where does Matthew tell us that Mary and Joseph moved with their young son? To Nazareth. Do we see what's happening here? Matthew was obviously familiar with the writings of the great prophets, and he was intent on showing how it is that Jesus fulfills every single one of their many prophecies. In today's first reading, then, Proto-Isaiah tells us that the people living in darkness in the regions of Zebulun and Naphtali would see a great light. Matthew believed that Jesus was that light. And so where do we find Matthew placing Jesus at the beginning of today's gospel? In the regions of Zebulun and Naphtali. Do we have any idea why Zebulun and Naphtali were so significant for the prophet Isaiah? As a boy, Proto-Isaiah had likely heard stories of the golden age of King David and King Solomon. He heard that King David succeeded in uniting Israel and Judah into a single kingdom. Under extreme foreign threats, the rival tribes of the region united, and they were a force to be reckoned with. As a boy, Proto-Isaiah heard stories of how the united Israelites defeated the Ammonites and Amalekites, of how they defeated the Edomites and the Moabites and the Philistines. Yes, despite his humanness, King David was a great light. His son King Solomon was also a light. Known for his great wisdom, King Solomon established trade routes with Africa and Asia, increasing the wealth of the nation. But after King Solomon's death, Israel fell into darkness. Solomon's sons fought over the kingdom, and the kingdom was divided. After 200 years of wars and squabbles, the Assyrians to the north marched down and conquered Israel, and all the Israelites were deported from their homeland. It was a dark moment in the history of Israel. And the first regions to be plunged into the darkness were Zebulun and Naphtali. The prophet Isaiah tried to offer hope to those deported people, telling them about a future Messiah, a Savior, one who would bring them home and unite them again. And Isaiah let them know that the regions of Zebulun and Naphtali, which were the first to be plunged into darkness, would be the first to be brought into the light. And so where do we find Jesus beginning his ministry in today's gospel? He's bringing his light to the people of Zebulun and Naphtali. Matthew explains that Jesus moved from Nazareth and had a home in Capernaum on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee in the region of Zebulun and Naphtali. As we continue forward during this year of Matthew, this year in which many of our gospel readings will come from the Gospel of Matthew, let's remember how it is that Matthew is trying to sell us on the idea that Jesus is the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of God prophesied by the prophets. And let's be attentive to how it is that Matthew helps us to see how it is that Jesus is the one for whom our ancient ancestors waited with joyful hope.